optimized. So, like this grid bus only needs work for like 2 or 3 minutes.
Right.
So it's very different from like a electric car, which you want to have several hours of driving. So it is really, we need power optimized batteries, not energy optimized batteries. This is just a short term thing. Right. So the battery mass can probably drop by maybe a factor of 10.
Right.
So that's just one example.
We bang up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Less buying.
Yeah. And everyone trying to get their creative to do work. You got a lot of people out there right now.
Yeah. I mean, just like that residuals number is a super big deal on the mass. So, because the booster is designed to have 3,600 tons of propellant, which is an almost 80% oxygen, liquid oxygen by mass.
Yeah.
Like 78%.
Could you burn it? What is it?
3.5. 3.5, 3.7.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and you want to bias it in favor of oxygen because oxygen is denser and cheaper.
Right.
So, in terms of improving your payload and reducing cost per ton, oxygen is basically plants make it for free and plankton.
Yeah.
So, it's basically like electricity cost of separation and distillation.
Right.
So it's.
Remind me though, is it like, as far as the ratio goes, fuel OF ratio, having the lighter molecule, don't you kind of want that to be spewing out faster or something? Because it's less reaction, it can accelerate it quicker?
Or yeah, there's a trade-off between, what you tend to get limited by is you don't want to go too close to stoichiometric because the heat's you basically melt your engine.
Yeah.
So, that tends to limit you on the OF, on trying to go to higher OF. Right. That's the actual thing limiting you. You tend to hit the stoichiometric melting point before you roll over on ISP.
Okay.
That's generally. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And remind me, are the grid fins, do they still fold in?
No.
Is that going to be permanently that way?
Yeah. So the what I'm trying to have us all just implement rigorously is this sort of 5-step process. First, make your requirements less dumb. Your requirements are definitely dumb. It does not matter who gave them to you. It's particularly dangerous if a smart person gave you the requirements because you might not question them enough.
Yeah, you might take it as like gospel, like you have to do this thing.
Everyone's wrong, no matter who you are. Everyone's wrong some of the time. So make your requirements less dumb. Then try very hard to delete the part or process. This is actually very important. If you're not occasionally adding things back in, you are not deleting enough. The bias tends to be very strongly towards, let's add this part or process step in case we need it. But you can basically make in case arguments for so many things. And for a rocket that is trying to achieve, trying to be the first fully reusable rocket, there's never been a fully reusable rocket. People don't understand. Like, this is like the holy grail of rocketry. Okay. And so you really need, you have to run at tight margins because if you don't run tight margins, you're going to get nothing to orbit. So you got to delete the part or process step, super important. And you can't like hedge your bets. So that's why the quick flips, for example, do not fold down because that's a whole extra mechanism that we don't need.
And then compensate for it by having strong enough engine authority to steer it in the atmosphere.
Actually, our simulation, so we don't really need any extra engine authority. As long as the grid bins, basically follow the flow, they're not really disturbing the flow. It's really neither here nor there. So as long as they don't have a high angle of attack, right, it doesn't matter.
A few degrees or something, or within a degree or two.
So, but in any case, it's a thing we could add later.
Right.
So now these grid fins are humongous. We'll go see them. But they're like a dinosaur bear trap. Okay. If I'm going to create a bear trap or a dinosaur, that's what these things look like. And if you have a whole mechanism for folding them, that's like clearly a part that we don't need.
Yep.
So this is a good design decision. That actually I didn't come up with, and it was like great. But it followed the principle of like delete part, delete process. I was like, great, good idea. Let's not fold them. Why are we folding them anyway? so random, like, no, and also, whatever requirement or constraint you have, it must come with a name, not a department, because you can't ask the department, you have to ask a person, and that person who's putting forward the requirement or constraint must agree that they must take responsibility for that requirement. Otherwise, you could have a requirement that basically an intern 2 years ago randomly came up with off the cuff, and they don't even at the company anymore,
Right.
But it came from the, let's say, aerial loads department. They're like, actually, didn't know what an aerial loads department actually is. It currently agrees with that. This is, by the way, happened several times.
So again, it can be literally.
I don't know what an aerial loads department. There's like, it's in every department. So
it can be thought of as gospel again, but it might be something that's just totally in passing. Like,
yeah.
Or someone played too much Kerbal and had fins at the top of the rocket, and then it just, did the.
These things are often just way more silly than you think. Anyway, so step 1, make a requirements list dump. Step 2, delete the part or process step. If you're not deleting a part or process step, at least 10% of the time, basically, if you're not adding things back in 10% of the time, you're clearly not deleting enough.
Right.
And then the third step is simplify or optimize. The third step, not the first step. The reason the third step is because it's very common. It's possibly the most common error of a smart engineer is to optimize a thing that should not exist. Okay. And say, well, why would people do that? Well, everyone's been trained in high school and college that you got to answer the questions, convergent logic. So you can't tell the professor your question is dumb, that you'll get a bad grade. You have to answer the question.
Yeah.
So everyone's basically, without knowing it, they got like mental straitjacket on. That is, they'll work on optimizing the thing that should simply not exist.
Right.
I give you an example from way back in the day of Falcon 1. So in the original sort of like, when Tom Miller and I were like batting around, like, okay, what should this rocket look like? I think I was literally in like Tom's kitchen or something. And we had like the spreadsheet and like, okay, we need to like make a minimally viable rocket, like half a ton or whatever, something like that. And then initially the spreadsheet had, we had an NTOM